Hey everyone, 13 weather meteorologist Sean Ash here, and what a 24 hours it's been in central Indiana. I know there has been so much discussion about tornado, landspout, tornado. So we have to start with what distinguishes the two as we move forward in this presentation on the damage assessments from both of them. Now, yesterday, if you were out, you know that we really just had rain. We didn't really have any rumbles of thunder. Now, we had some rain in the morning that essentially we thought stabilized the atmosphere until about midday. We had a little bit of sun, and that did heat things up a little bit and made things a little unstable at the surface. I'll explain that in a second. First, I want to talk about the classic tornado setup. And we're talking about tall thunderstorms that have these big rotating updrafts that go 20, 30,000 feet in the atmosphere. And so that when the radar hits that rotation in the mid-level of the storm, we're seeing this up here, and that catches our attention to look as far down toward the ground as we can. And these are the big storms, thunder and lightning, things like that. That's the classic severe, classic tornado setup. The landspout setup, and a little bit similar in those hot summer days where you get the dust devils. Usually what happens is it's more of a shower in nature, and there's a little axis way down at the ground. And all the rotation, by the way, with this usually is very far, very shallow, something we call shallow, and near the ground level, where the radar just can't get a great picture of what's going on down here. And then because it's more shallow, we're not seeing what's going on up here. And there really isn't much because that rotation, again, is so close to the ground. We had a little bit of a hybrid situation with this particular setup yesterday. And I want to show you the picture. This is from Abby. Sam and Abby were on their way back to Ball State University, kind enough to share the video they caught. And when I saw the video, I was like, my goodness, this thing's a tornado. If you look at this, and this is again Abby's picture. So basically, he goes, here's ground. This is it. I mean, this is the rotation right here. That's it. The radar beam in Indianapolis was shooting way more up here generally. So missed a lot of this, okay? And another big question that we've been asked is, why no warning? A very fair question. This does not happen often, obviously, but maybe a day out of the year, maybe a couple of days out of the year, we will have these very rare situations like this. Very shallow rotation that's mostly under that radar beam, okay? To the point by the time they form, they dissipate just as quickly. And I like to call this a highly localized meteorological accident. It took all these ingredients. You had to have just enough spin in the lower levels, just enough moisture, just enough instability to create the mess that we had yesterday. We'll start with Delaware County, which the National Weather Service office is calling a landspout tornado. The strength on this was EF0, max wind of 60 to 65. It hit one structure, the TK Constructor Building. Path width was only 10 yards. And I mean, this thing was really on the ground probably for less than 1 minute. So very, very brief. I want to show you what the radar looked like. This is something we call storm relative velocity. Now, as a meteorologist, in order to, you would had to have come into work and say, you know what, I really think we're going to have spinners today. You know, I'm going to be watching that velocity like a hawk. And in reality, the core of the meteorology community just didn't have that sense, even in the afternoon, that that's what we were staring down. And it wasn't until we were starting to get the reports, then you kind of can go back and look at the micro scale setup. This is a radar snapshot of the velocities at 7:30 p.m. So here's Portland. Again, there's a little bit of rotation here. And then here's Yorktown. So this, again, just a little bit, but nothing based on that would have just said, okay, yeah, we're probably going to issue a tornado warning on this. Now, we jump to 7:40, and the radar is now picking up on the debris that was picked up from the TK Constructors building. But again, by the time we started to get the video that takes time to turn around, this thing was already off the ground. So very briefly on the ground. Now we just got in the assessment of the Delaware County tornado that hit Portland. But different of a setup. This was more of a low-topped supercell. When we say low, I mean this thing was really close to the ground. EF1 wind with a maximum wind of about 110 miles per hour. This was on the ground for 2 miles. And I'm going to show you the radar here in a moment. So 2 miles, 75-yard width, and on the ground for roughly 6 minutes, which really grabbed my attention here, okay? 7:45 was the start time that they're giving, and 7:51 is when the National Weather Service in northern Indiana says that it dissipated. This is at 7:46. Here's downtown Portland. Here's just west of. Again, weak rotation. But remember, we talked about how shallow, so all the action was going on toward the ground, and we're only just seeing a very little sliver of what was really going on. This is the debris detector. So the radar can detect raindrops. It also can detect what we call non-meteorological objects. This is at 7:48. So the tornado has already been in progress for a few minutes. At that time, it hadn't really hit a lot of big structures just yet. By 7:50, it starts to encounter the high school, okay? And then as we move forward, this is at 8:01. So it's already off the ground by 6 minutes. It still actually has a tornado debris signature that is east of the city now at this point in time. But I guess what I'm trying to tell you is that by the time a radar operator would have seen this, unless you're getting reports, and you weren't going to really have chasers out yesterday, but by the time you see this thing is already starting to wrap up. So I hope that explains the complexities of what happened yesterday. And again, like I said, it doesn't happen very frequently. It is certainly a humbling experience. And this again is another snapshot. So this is at right around 7:51. There is the debris from the Portland tornado. And even at 7:51, the radar is detecting that debris that had been picked up. And that's where it was picking it up. The debris actually north of Muncie. Thankfully, the tornado, landspout tornado, dissipated before it made it into Muncie. So bottom line is this. Look, whatever you want to call it did damage, and that's the most important thing to us. Thankful for no injuries on this. And in the coming days here, we will have chances, maybe late tonight, south of I-70, and then during the day on Tuesday, the potential for some rotating thunderstorms as well. Hopefully it gives you a little better understanding of how this thing played out yesterday and the difference between the classical tornado setup and the landspout tornado setup. And again, the main theme is everything happening so low to the ground that by the time we were getting spotter reports of like, hey, this thing's going on, this thing had already lifted up. So we appreciate you choosing us for your local weather information. Stay tuned for updates to come on what looks to be an active week ahead.